that we just read, or Joe just read, 1 Corinthians 13, is you almost always hear it at weddings. And it may have been at your wedding, and that's great. But that's not what Paul was talking about. He didn't mean this for weddings necessarily. He had actually a really, really profound application for this. And we are going to start looking through what are called the spiritual fruits. There's 9 of them we're going to look through, and today we're going to tackle love. Oh, love, true love. I've been watching Princess Bride way too much. Some of you got that. I'm dating myself by saying that. But see, we're going to start by looking at love, but first what I want to do is, Joe read something from Galatians chapter 5, and it's this thing called fruits of the Spirit, okay? And if you haven't been to church a lot, you're probably asking, what does this mean, fruits of the Spirit? If you think about it, it's a rather odd way to talk, that there's going to be fruits of the Spirit. And here, let me give a pictorial image of what Paul's trying to do, and then break it down first. Okay, now if I show you this, you can see this image on the screen, and those who are on the video, sorry, you're on a video, you should come. If you can see this image on the screen, and I ask you, these are seeds, and I say to you, okay, what fruit tree is this going to produce? No guesses. Anybody? You can guess if you want. You can take a wild guess, and you probably could get it right, but you would be guessing. You looking at these seeds, you say, I don't know what that's going to produce. Who knows? Okay, well, if I go further and I show you this is the trunk of that tree. I've gone from the seeds and I've gone down to the trunk, and now I tell you, can you guess which fruit this is going to produce? And you say, no, get to the point. Well, what's the point? Well, here. Okay, it was an apple tree. Did anybody get that one right? Nobody guessed apple? Okay, now what's the point? What is Paul trying to say with this fruits of the Spirit metaphor? What he's trying to say is this: looking at the seeds alone, looking at the trunk alone, you'll never know what kind of fruit you'll never know what kind of fruit tree that tree is unless you look at the fruit that it produces. Paul, what he's doing here in Galatians, is he's saying that fruit of the Spirit, it means that when you become a Christian, and if you truly say, yes, Jesus died for me, and I know that, now he's my king, he's my Lord, and it's changed my life forever, he says, listen, that'll start to have internal change come about. But it'll be manifested externally. People will start to see that there's some difference in your life because you're producing fruit that's changed from the inside. What Paul's trying to do here with the church in Galatians, and what we'll see in the Corinthian church too, is he's trying to get internal change that produces external results, not external pressure that produces internal guilt. Let me give an illustration of what I mean by this. If you take a Coke can, a can of Coke, an empty one, preferably, and you smash it, okay, you have exerted external pressure on this thing, and now it has changed in shape, form, texture, size, everything. On the other hand, if you take a rubber ball and you squeeze it in your hand and you smash it, and you let go, what happens? The rubber ball returns right back to its form. See, one was external pressure without internal change. Nothing ever happened to it. The rubber ball bounces right back to its form. That's religion. That's when people say, be good, be a moral person, be a nicer person, be a more loving person. And it'll last for probably 5 minutes of your life. And then you were like the rubber ball will spring right back to where you were before. But Paul says, no, I want you to have change. True, deep, internal change. Not externally motivated guilt. Let me give another example. Many of you know that I used to work in marketing. I was in the business world for a long, long, long time. And I had this CEO one time, a boss, my boss. And he was a jerk, okay? And here's to prove how much of a jerk he was. He says, listen, and he always had this one phrase. In marketing, he said, if you want people to buy your product, you need to operate on one of 3 variables: fear, greed, or vanity. He said, listen, if you want to sell your product, you either have to tap into the person's fear that they're going to lose out on something if they don't buy your product, greed that they need your product to be better or have more than the other person, or vanity that if they get your product, somehow their life will be so much better than other people. And I'm not going to name the company because he actually was a very successful CEO. And he made a lot of money off of these 3 variables. But you see this, if you and I operate our life, but trying to change our life by either fear, greed, or vanity, we'll be just like that rubber ball that gets squeezed for a moment with external pressure, but the minute you let it go, it returns right back. No, Paul says. Paul says, I want you to cultivate 9 fruits 9 of these that we're going to look through, love being the first one that we're going to look at today. Now, if you saw that list of 9, you remember that list, we'll go back to it. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. You know that it is almost impossible for you to cultivate these on your own. You know this. You and I both know this. You and I both know that on our own, cultivating love, joy, peace, it sounds great, but it's almost impossible. And why? Here's what I like to say about this Soul Grace community, okay? This is you guys, not me. You're better. See, you're the good-looking ones. I'm not that good-looking. See, this is the church. You know, we look put together from the outside, right? You know, they're up-and-coming people. They're intelligent, upwardly mobile. This is the church. This is what people think. This is the church, people in church, they got it together. People who go to church, their lives are going well. And here at Soul Grace, I like to do something that I call, no, we are all what? A work in progress. We are all a work in progress. I actually was joking this week with somebody that if you came to Soul Grace and if you come to tell me, my life's okay, I got pretty much all the answers, I would tell you, please leave. We have nothing to do with you here. Because we are a work in progress. We are petty people. We are selfish people. We don't cultivate love, gentleness, self-control, and patience. No, we do the exact opposite. Why? Because we are broken and we know this. We are in progress. And this is what makes doing all of these fruits, cultivating all of these things that you see on this list incredibly difficult. Now, because we're a work in progress, we need to focus on these. Now, today we're going to look at this one called love. Love, true love. Oh, how we get it so wrong. And Paul wants to correct us this morning. See, this passage isn't about love, about romantic love. It's not about weddings and all that good fuzzy feelings. Paul's saying some really, really fundamental things to us about our definition of love, how broken it is, how small it is, and what I'm going to call tiny love. And then Paul's going to go into what he's going to show us what true love looks like. So first, tiny love. Let me look at this for a second. If you want to know the weight of this passage, what Paul's really trying to communicate, you have to first ask, who is he writing to? Who is he writing to? All this love stuff. What is he? Who are these people? Well, they're the church in Corinth. And if you want to know the church in Corinth, let's do a little geography real quick. The church in Corinth, you can see the little red dot there. Okay, it was in Greece, and it was on the cusp of 2 major oceans. Okay, now if you drill down a little bit, what you'll see is okay, you'll see it located here. Now, why is this important? Why am I doing a geography lesson for you this morning? I know you didn't come to church for that. Here's why. If you notice where it's located, it was on a central key point on a peninsula. It was on an isthmus, rather. And if you wanted to go from one of those big oceans to the other big ocean, you could either take your boat all the way around and lose a lot of money and time, or you could go directly through there. And so Corinth became a famous town because it built a canal and it let people come and channel through there. Now, why is this important? Because when you have people, merchants and fabric sellers and traders and businessmen and lawyers and doctors, and they're all coming through your town, you are going to get an extremely diverse, talented, educated, and polished group of people coming into your city. See, the church at Corinth would have been filled with people who were the upwardly mobile, the almost the elite, the businessmen, and it would have been extremely diverse. But know this too, the church in Corinth, as we see it when we read the book of Corinthians, is extremely talented. This is the church you and I would want to go to. This is the church, Paul says, that has great preaching. Wouldn't you like great preaching? I would. This is the church that's got great music. This is the church that's got a great children's program. This is the church, people are standing up and they're prophesying and they're healing. People are giving away all their money to the poor. It looks at all costs like the greatest church that ever could live. A diverse mix of talented, educated, well-off people who are thriving. And Paul looks at them and says, you're missing something. He says, listen, here's the problem with you guys. You're talented, yes. But in the book of Corinthians, we also find that the people are impatient and rude and self-serving. We find the people of the church in Corinth, they're talented and they're accomplished and they're polished, and yet underneath all of that, they're really self-seeking, petty, self-centered, and selfish. They're almost condescending at times, Paul says. Now, what's the problem here? See, you would go to this church in Corinth and you would look, and all the people would be passionate, they'd be talented, music great, great preaching, great everything, great show. And you'd say, this is the church I want to belong to, sign me up. And Paul says, but they're missing something. They're missing love. What's key here is that he's saying, listen, you can preach the greatest sermons, but you can do it without any ounce of love. And what I'm going to set to posit this morning was that the Corinthians probably had love. They loved doing church work. It says here they gave away their money. They would give their body to the flames. That takes love, does it not? But it's what St. Augustine later in his book Confessions calls disordered love. He says fundamentally, you and I, when we think of love, our love, reason why we don't love each other enough and the reason why we don't love God enough is that we've disordered our loves. Our loves and the love of the Corinthian church was on their performance, on how good they looked and how well they performed at church. And 2,000 years later, nothing much has changed for you and me. Our loves are centered on being recognized, being accomplished. And St. Augustine says these are disordered loves. And C.S. Lewis in his book, The Four Loves, takes it even further. And I put this in your outline. And he says not only are our loves disordered, but they're tiny. They're small. He said it's not just that you love recognition too much. It's not that you just love achievement and success too much. He says that it's so tiny in comparison to the love that you can have. And he writes this. He says, it remains certainly true that all natural loves are inordinate. Inordinate does not mean insufficiently cautious, he says. Nor does it mean too big. It's not a quantitative term. He said it's probably impossible to love another human simply too much, quote unquote. But we may love him too much in proportion to our love for God. But it is the smallness of our love for God, not the greatness of our love for the man, that constitutes this inordinacy. The better way to put it, C.S. Lewis in another book says this: you and I would rather go on making mud pies, he says, in the ghetto, rather than take up the offer of a vacation by the beach. Lewis says, we are content with so little. Our loves are so puny and so tiny in proportion to the love that we can have from God, and then therefore the love that we can have with one another. Later on, Lewis, let me give another way to put this. Lewis gives three types of loves. One he calls need love. One he calls gift love, and one he calls appreciative love. And he says this: need love is when I need you to love me. I need it. I'm needy out of my poverty. I need you. Gift love is when I can give you love freely and unconditionally. And he says appreciative love is when I can stare at you in awe. And he has a beautiful quote here. He says, need love cries out to God from our poverty. Gift love longs to serve or even to suffer for God. Appreciative love says, simply, we give thanks to thee for thy great glory. He puts it in human terms by saying, need love says of a woman, I cannot live without her. Gift love, though, longs to give her happiness, comfort, protection, if possible, wealth. But appreciative love gazes and holds its breath, and it's silent, and it rejoices that such a wonder as this woman should exist, even if not for him, will not wholly be dejected by losing her, and would rather have it so than never to have seen her at all. You see, the Corinthian church operated out of need love. They were great preachers, they were great musicians, great prophesiers, great givers, but that was all because they needed it. They needed people to see what they were doing, and Paul says, your need love has no love in it. Paul points at them and says, you're doing wonderful things. Yes, that's great. You're accomplishing so much in life. But you're still operating out of needy love, poverty-based love, where you and I demand the appreciation, the respect, the admiration, the love, the respect of everyone around us. And if we don't get it, we get flaming mad. That's need love. Now, what's true love? If I ended there and I simply said to you, now go try harder. Go try you're a needy person. Go not be needy. Go be a more loving person. You would surely look at me and say, Pastor, that's so stupid. I've tried it. It doesn't work. And you're right. It doesn't work. Simply trying harder does not work. Paul knows this, and C.S. Lewis says this: if you want to break out of your need love, you need to have an act of gift love break into your life. The only thing that changes need love into appreciative love is gift love. Where are we going to get the gift love? Paul points to it quite clearly, actually. Here's a grammar lesson. Look back if you have your Bibles open to 1 Corinthians 13. I wish I could put the text back on the screen, but open it up if you have it. Do you notice that Paul does not say to the Corinthians, be more patient, be more loving, be nicer? He does not give them a list of commands. Actually, what he does is he describes what love is. And if you looked in the Greek, I know none of you will probably, but you can look at it if you want for fun sometime. All of these verbs that he uses for love are what we call transitive, present active verbs. Now, why is that important? Because you only use these verbs when you're describing a person. You see, Paul says, love patiences, love suffers, love bears. These are active verbs. Paul is not telling the Corinthian church, and he's not telling you and me this morning, if we want to be more loving, just to be loving. He's not saying be kind, be patient, because we know we're all a work in progress, and that ain't going to work. Love is not something you do. Love is something you have to meet, Paul would argue. Paul here is describing something, or yet better yet, someone. See, when St. Paul's writing this letter, and he says in verse 4 through 7, he cannot be just thinking of love as an abstract concept. No, that's not what he's doing at all. You know, when he says love suffers long, he surely really remembered the one who sat on the cross and said, my God, why have they forsaken me? When Paul writes that love keeps no record of wrongs, he would have surely remembered the one who said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing, as they were killing him. When Paul says love always protects, always hopes, he would have known the one who looked at the criminal on the cross next to him and said, today you will be with me in paradise. I protect you. When Paul says love perseveres, he would have known the one who said, it is finished, meaning in Aramaic, I did it. Love perseveres. And Paul would have known the one who sat on the cross and said, I finished this to my death to save you. Love never ends, Paul writes. I love my wife, I love my kids, but someday I will die or they will die. Surely Paul would not have been thinking about that. He would have known the one who on Easter morning rose. He would have known the one who looked at his disciples and said, I will be with you, what, until the ends of the ages. See, when Paul's talking about love, he's not talking about it like an abstract concept. That'll do you and I no good this morning. If you and I walk out of this room thinking of love as an abstract idea, we will become no more of a loving person, maybe for 5 minutes, but it'll rub off the first time somebody rubs us the wrong way. No, Paul says, go and meet love. Meet him on the cross, and his name is Jesus. Jesus was the embodiment of all of this that Paul is talking about. He was the one who suffered. He was the one who persevered. He was the one who finished it. He was the one who bore all. That was Jesus. Meet him, Paul would say, and then you will know love. And you will be forever changed. See, you and I, it's not about trying to be more loving. Remember, we're works in progress. We'll never get there on our own. Paul says, meet the one who is love. See him on the cross dying for you. See him rising and taking the punishment away from you that you deserved. Do that. Meet him, and your heart will melt. And when your heart melts, you will know then what true love is. And I'm going to do something that I swore I never, ever would do from the pulpit. I'm going to do it, and I know. I swore I would never, ever use a Disney movie as a sermon reference. And if you've been living in a cave for the last 6-7 months and you don't know the plot line to Frozen, cover your ears because it's about to get blown, okay? And most of you know this. You want to know what true love is? Here you go. You remember Anna? What is her need love? Anna says, finally and forever, somebody will notice me when the castle gates open. And what is Elsa's need love? Remember, she says, conceal, don't feel. Keep up your image. Don't let people in. Don't let them hurt you. Don't hurt them. They had need love. And this is the beauty part of it. Anna, of course, gets injured. She's ill. She has her heart. It's being frozen. And Grandpappy, the greatest troll in the world, says, if you want to heal it, the only way you heal a frozen heart is true love. And of course, all the trolls, they think true love is a kiss. They say, true love's kiss, true love's kiss. Okay, go. And Anna, she's buzzing back. She thinks Hans is her true love. She has to kiss him. That doesn't quite work out so well. Then at the end of the movie, you look at this, cover here, spoiler alert, you see this. You see Kristoff running, and he's slow motion, and this is true love. This is true love. He's going to kiss her, and the heart's going to melt. Wrong again. Disney finally got it right. Because as Anna saw her sister, Elsa, dying and about to be killed by Hans, what does she do? She does this. She says, no. And she covers up. Why is it that my 3-year-old walks around screaming this? Covering her brother, saying no, covering her dolls, no. Why? Because there's something, she doesn't have good theology, she's only 3. She just knows something that you and I know to be true as well. Greater love hath none than this, that a man would lay down his life for his friends. This is true love. That she gave her life, and that's what melts the heart. Not romantic true love kisses, but the sacrifice of one life for another. Now, can you not see the one who covers you on the cross and says, no, you can't have them. Take me instead. There's no greater love. If you meet Jesus on the cross and you know that he covered you, your heart will begin to melt. And then you know what love is. And then you can go out and love. Now, as I close, I want to give just really quick some practical applications. I want you to meditate on seeing Jesus cover you on the cross. And if that's true, and if your heart starts to melt, here's some practical applications for what love looks like. First, we see through the cross when Jesus dies for us. Love, first and foremost, is not a feeling, it's an action. Sometimes in your life, you're not going to feel love towards another person. There's going to be no capacity in you. You're not going to even like them. You're not going to love them. And Jesus sat on the cross and saying, listen, I didn't have feelings of love for you, but I showed you an action of love. And in our lives, love will most often be an action before it's a feeling. Know that sometimes you're going to have to act in love before you even feel love, because the biblical notion, the gospel says, love is not just warm fuzzies. Love is sacrifice. Love is falling on the sword. Love is taking up your cross for someone else. But the last application that goes along with that is this. If you're going to love people, and if I'm going to be loving towards people, and if we're going to start to love others, it's going to take a sacrifice, and it's going to take vulnerability, and sometimes that's going to hurt. It hurts to love people. But your other option is to not love at all. Spare yourself the hurt. But here's what C.S. Lewis says as he closes the book, Four Loves. He says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully, round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love it all is to be vulnerable. See the one in Jesus who was ultimately vulnerable for you, that he would give his life to cover you and shout, no, this one's mine. I love him so. I love her so. Go to God in silent prayer now. Meditate on this and reflect on this truth. And if it's not been true for you before, this is a time, at this moment, right now, you can make it true. Say, God, I want this. I want this type of love. Go in prayer now.